when we look at who we are actually living in this sensual realm, the karma bhava, and we can only refer to ourselves as organisms in an environment. Because basically we have this body that is active, and it is this body that has processes going on that keeps us alive. And in this process of being alive, we begin to experience the whole environment. The first process that is there to keep us alive is the process of metabolism. This is basically the process of going on in every cell in the body that keeps the whole body alive. This is the life-sustaining process. When metabolism stops, then the body is dead. In other words, in a dead body, there is no metabolism. And the only way a body can be alive is that there is metabolism going on. And with the process of metabolism going on, there is the activities of the body going on, then we are able to experience consciousness through experiencing the environment, through our sensory perceptions, leading us to be able to see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and cognize, to think. And these processes that lead us to be able to see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and cognize, this is the Pañca Khandhā, what is commonly called the 5 aggregates. And Bhante calls this the process of perception. And those 5 items are the 5 constituents. He calls them the 5 constituents of the process of perception. So this is the main topic for today before we get into Paticcasamuppada. Okay? So let's take a look at this Pañca Khandhā, what is commonly called the 5 aggregates. But I would like to point out that we're going to use Bhante's translation. Bhante Punnaji's translation is the 5 constituents of the process of perception. What are the 5 constituents? The first is rupa. Rupa is this mental image that arises in our mind when we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch anything. There is a mental image. Or even when we think of something from memory, from imagination, there is a mental image arising. The mind is basically a continuous flow of mental images. So when we are conscious and awake, the mind is continuously producing mental images. Right? So this is really rupa. Now, rupa is often translated as materiality or objects or physical. It's not. It's really mental image. The meaning of the word rupa is appearance or mental image. Sometimes some people translate rupa as form. It's not form also. It's really the mental image that arises in the mind. And the second constituent of the process of perception, together with the third, they go together. Vedana and Sanya. These two always go together. I will explain later on why they go together. They are not separable. You cannot have Vedana without Sanya. You cannot have Sanya without Vedana. They go together. And I'll come to these in great details later on about Vedana and Sanya. Then to put it all together, there is a process called Sankara. This is the mental construction, constructing everything that is experienced through the sense organs. What is experienced through the sense organs comes through as Sanya, sensation. Right? So we're going to look into this in great detail today to look at what exactly is Sanya, because it has often been translated as, Sanya has been translated as perception. But the real meaning of Sanya, and this can be proven with scientific findings, this is really sensation, sensing the environment. And finally, when it is put together, the big picture, the overall perception arises, and this is the perception, vijnana. Again, vijnana is often translated as consciousness. I will not go into that in details today. We're not touching so much on vijnana today, but I will explain in the next sharing why vijnana is really perception for the 5 physical senses. It is only consciousness when we talk about the cognizing part, the mano vijnana. That is consciousness. But all the other vijnana, the chakku vijnana and sota vijnana, these are perceptions. Okay. So today we're really going to focus on this Vedana and Sanya and Sankara, so that we can gain a deeper understanding of this foundational knowledge before we move on to talk about the whole 5 constituents put together, right? How it produces perception and how we interpret these perceptions. So we will do that next week. But for today's sharing, we will focus on Vedana and Sanya, and as well as Sankara. Right? So let's take a look at a simple example of seeing. So here is the experience of seeing. Now again, I would like to point out, very importantly, that Bhante Punnaji has always reminded us to apply experiential mindset when we look at it. So let's examine the process of seeing, the experience of seeing from an experiential perspective, right? So experience arises dependent on the presence of necessary conditions. And what are the conditions necessary for seeing? Well, you have a dog there and you have a person looking at the dog. So what are the important conditions apart from having a dog and having someone looking at the dog? There is this experience of seeing. Seeing can only be possible if there is light. In other words, if the whole place is completely pitch dark, a person cannot see. We cannot see when it's completely pitch dark. Seeing depends on the presence of light. When there's no light, we can't see. It's pitch dark, right? So light reflected from the dog, the object, and enters the eye. So it's reflected light entering the eyes. And the eyes are the sense organ. And inside the eye, at the back of the eyeball, is retina. And that picks up the light. Today, we're going to go deep into this explanation from a scientific perspective. So it's going to be very interesting. Some of you would never have known this, how that works, but we're going to explore into that so that you can have a proper understanding of Sanya, Vedana, and Sankara. So it stimulates light-sensitive cells inside the eyeball, the sense organ. And when we are paying attention, that means we are aware of what is being perceived with the eyes, then we have this mental image arising. We become aware that we are now seeing a dog. So there is this experience of seeing the dog. And this experience is the perception, right? So this process of perception, the Pañca produces this perception. And this is the vijnana, the arising of this perception. And it is manifested in the form of a mental image, rupa. So there is this experience of seeing, and the mind automatically projects this experience, projecting the concept of an object that has been identified as a dog out there. So in other words, every time we experience something through the eye, the mind projects it and says, oh, there is a dog out there. But in reality, there is only the experience. So this experience is the experience of seeing. So in the process of seeing, there is only the seeing. This is the only thing happening, that experience of seeing. But the mind likes to project and break that experience into 2 parts. This breaking of the experience into 2 parts is called dichotomy. So dichotomy means breaking something into 2 separate, distinct parts. So when we experience seeing, the mind automatically breaks this experience into 2 parts. And I'm referring to the mind of ordinary people like us, not the Arahant. Okay, I'll come to that later, why this doesn't happen in the Arahant. But in ordinary people, unenlightened people like us, this is an automatic process that is happening. The mind breaks that experience into 2 parts. That is called dichotomy of experience. What are the 2 parts? First, it identifies that there is an object out there. So that is called the objective experience. This experience is happening in the mind, but the mind is thinking that there is an object out there. And that's why it's projecting the concept of an object identified as a dog out there. At the same time, if there is an object out there in the mind, then there must be something in here. And that is what this dichotomy of experience has done. It produces, it breaks the experience into two parts. One part is this object out there, that is the objective experience. And the other part is there is this self in here. Now, this is created by the mind. Self does not exist. It is actually the mind that has broken the experience into two parts. One is the object out there, and the other one is the subject in here. Subject in here is the self. So what is out there is the world, the loka. What is in here is the self, the atta. So that is what the mind has done. It's broken that experience into two parts. And that is really, in the Paticca Samuppada, we will explain much further in greater details why this is happening, why this is breaking it into two parts. We will come to that when we come to the Paticca Samuppada in more details. But today, we're just going to concentrate on the process of perception, what is Sanya, Vedana, and Sankhara. Okay. So let's take a look at this Sanya, the sensing of light frequencies. Let's listen to what Bhante has to say about that.
Now, in the process of perception, we have Vedana and Sanya.
Mm-hmm.
Vedana is your feeling.
Yep.
Now, when you talk in terms of what you see, when you open your eyes, what is it that you see?
We see the object. Right?
First, you have to understand, if you don't have light, can you see?
No.
You have your eyes, but there is no light. Can you see?
No.
You can't. Then what is light?
It's a form of energy.
Huh?
It's a form of energy.
Ah, okay. It's some kind of energy coming from outside to the eye.
That's correct.
Huh? And that energy, do you know that energy that is coming, it is coming in the form of
Waves.
huh?
Waves.
Ah, waves.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And those waves have what is called a frequency.
That is correct. Yeah.
So there are waves coming with different frequencies. And in the eye, there are nerve endings that can detect those frequencies.
Yeah.
And when they detect a frequency, what do they see?
Light, different colors.
Huh?
Different colors of light.
Ah, there you are. You know it. In other words, when you open your eyes, what you see is color.
That's correct.
That color is what is called sanya.
Right. Okay. So
You understand?
now I understand. So so the nerve translates that color into an image in the brain. Nerves will translate. The nerves will carry those signals, the color signals in the brain, and combine to an image.
It creates the image. The image that you see is created by the colors
Right.
that you see.
Right. Bhante.
That creation part is sankhara.
Sankhara. Okay.
You understand?
Now I understand. Yeah.
Okay, let's review what Bhante has said. Oh, by the way, just wanted to quickly mention, the voice you heard in the background interacting with Bhante, that was Saikat Kisha, one of the devotees from Australia. He was originally from Bangladesh. So he's not migrated to Australia. And he was attending this retreat and asking a lot of very good questions. So I'm very thankful to Brother Saikat. Thank you, Brother Saikat, if you are listening in. From his questions to Bhante, we actually managed to record a lot of these very interesting explanations, which normally, we would not be able to have heard it without such intelligent questions. So Bhante was explaining first about sanya, the sensation of colors. And Bhante pointed out, when we open our eyes, what do we see? And he said that it has to be light. So we're really seeing light entering the eyes. So we see light, and light is really energy from the environment in the form of waves, light waves. Okay, so light waves have different frequency. Now I just want to explain for the non-science people. See, wave is sort of going up and down, that is wave. So how many cycles in 1 second is really the frequency. Now that's how frequent within a second. So if there's 1,000, then it's 1 kilo hertz, right? So it's measured in terms of how many hertz. 1 hertz is 1 cycle per second. So that frequency is measuring how many cycles in 1 second. And the wave going up and down, they actually can use a device called an oscilloscope, and to be able to measure the length of that wave. And therefore, wave has a wavelength and frequency. Now we have to, I will come to this in a moment, a bit more detailed. It's important to now recognize waves have frequency. That's it. Different wavelengths, different frequency. So when we see different color, it's actually a different frequency. The mind interprets frequency as color. Color does not exist out there. What you think you see as red or blue or green, they are not red or blue or green. They are just light reflected from the object at different frequency, reflected at different frequency entering the eye. So the eye is picking up the different frequency. Certain frequencies are red, certain frequencies are blue, and so on. So the mind interprets these frequencies as color. Color does not exist out there. It's just light reflected at different frequency. The mind interprets it as colors. That's really what's going on. So the eye, inside the eye at the retina, I will go into more details in this in a moment. The eye has nerve ending detecting different frequencies, right? Different light frequencies entering the eye. And nerves carry the impulse that is stimulated by the light. There is an electrical impulse on these light sensitive cells, that then these nerve cells, optical nerves, then they carry that impulse to the brain. Right? And then the brain will process it. Then the activity of the brain is really the experience of the mind. I'm going to repeat that. Listen to this. The activity of the brain is the experience of the mind. So when we say mind, we are actually referring to the experience of activity of the brain. It's not only the brain, it is actually the whole body, especially the nervous system made of the spinal cord, the nerves, and so on. So the eye, right, the nerves from the eyeball, and so that's part of the body, going to the brain, so it's being processed inside the brain. So really all this activity is what we call mind. So bear in mind this, that mind is really the experience of the activity of the body, especially in the central nervous system, but also various parts of the body. Right? So nerves carry the impulse, the brain processes it, then the mind becomes aware and interprets it as different colors, different frequencies, different colors. So sanya is actually referring to the sensing of different frequencies, sensing by the eyeball. So that's why Bhante translated as sensation. I'm going to show you the scientific explanation later on, very, very precise, and it's very accurate. What Bhante has translated is very accurate and can be supported fully with science. Because today, with our scientific instruments and various things going on, various modern scientific instruments can measure a lot of things. And the process of perception is one of those things that is able to be measured to a great extent, not totally 100%, but able to measure quite a lot of this. So we're going to come to that in a moment. So sanya is referring to the sensing of light frequencies that strike the light-sensitive cells at the back of the eyeball, the retina. So that's why Bhante calls it sensation, sensing of light frequencies. And then the mind processes these in frequencies and put it all together into a picture, an image. The image that we see, it is really created by putting together all the different colors that we see, all the different frequencies that we see. So for lack of a better word, we'll call it colors, but actually it's different frequencies. This process of putting together, creating, is sankhara, mental construction, part of the 5 constituents of the process of perception, part of the Pañca Khandhā. So sanya is that sensation. So when light enters the eyes, it is carried through the optic nerves to the brain. When sound enters the ear, I will explain more detail in the next sharing how hearing works. Today we will focus on the most complex of the 5 senses, and that is seeing. Seeing is by far the most complex of the 5 physical senses. So hearing is the sound entering the ear, stimulating the eardrum, and then the nerves, the auditory nerves, carry the signal to the brain. And smelling, likewise, is the olfactory bulb inside the nose, picking up the various odors and stimulated with impulses that are carried to the brain through the olfactory nerves. And the tongue is basically the receptors in the tongue, right? The taste buds, picking up, binding with various taste molecules and carried to the brain through these gustatory nerves. And touch, likewise, is basically a lot of sensitive nerves underneath the skin, picking up vibrations and heat and all kinds of stuff, carrying several signals to the brain for us to experience touching in terms of whether it is something is hard or soft, something is hot or cold, something that is prickly, painful, or soothing, right? So that is really what is going on with our 5 senses. So now we're going to take a look at this sensation of colors. That means we are going to be focusing on the process of seeing in today's sharing.
Some scientists claim the simple act of seeing a color triggers a spontaneous reaction in the nervous system. This is automatic. It isn't caused by any association, but by the wavelength of the color. Objects reflect light at different wavelengths. Our brain interprets these wavelengths as different colors, from blue, the shortest wavelength, through green and yellow, to red, the longest. The long wavelengths, the reds and oranges, are said to arouse the nervous system. Heart rate and blood pressure increase. The short wavelengths, the blues and violets, are meant to relax the nervous system.
Right, sensation of colors. Let's go through what the narrator spoke about. He says, the simple act of seeing a color triggers a spontaneous reaction in the central nervous system. This is automatic. What they were referring to is when light enters the eyeball and strikes the light-sensitive cells on the retina, that is the spontaneous reaction. Light striking the light-sensitive cells sends an impulse to the brain, and then we become aware of light frequencies, right? And this is all automatic. And it is not caused by any association. That means when light enters the brain and it is being processed by the brain, there is no association at this point in time. There means no interpretation of what is that object. There is only colors, right? So at this point, it is only interpreting wavelength or frequency, right? and therefore it's really interpreting the wavelength as different colors. That's the only interpretation going on at this point in time, not of the object. And this is very low level, sensing specific light frequencies, not seeing the whole object. We think we see the whole object. We don't. We are just picking up light, okay? So objects reflect light at different wavelengths or different frequencies, and our brain interprets these wavelengths as different colors. There you have it. The scientists are saying that it is really the interpretation of these wavelengths or frequencies into colors. Right? Blue is the shortest wavelength. Right? The short wavelength has high frequency. Right? Blue through green, yellow to red, and red has the longer wavelength, means lower frequency, like slower waves. So the long wavelengths, the slow one, which is red and oranges, are said to arouse the nervous system. That means it irritates the nervous system, causing a spontaneous reaction in the nervous system. This reaction is a reaction of unpleasant feeling, okay? And heart rate and blood pressure increase. That's what the scientists have determined, that in a controlled environment, when we see red and orange, our heart rate rises a little bit. So they have very sensitive instruments that measure these things, right? So the scientists have proven that, right? And the short wavelength, that means the higher frequency, blue and violet, right? They relax the nervous system. And here is the clue to Vedana. In other words, we're talking about whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. So based on what the scientists are saying here, the low frequency or long wavelength, like red and oranges, are supposed to be unpleasant because it irritates the nervous system. And high frequency short wavelengths, like blue and violet, are supposed to relax the nervous system, more pleasant. So this is actually a very spontaneous, natural reaction. This is not talking about whether you like blue or you don't like blue. It's got nothing to do with liking. It has not reached that stage, right? At this point in time, we're not talking about whether you like or don't like. You're not aware of what you like or don't like yet. It is just the nervous system reacting spontaneously, okay? So here is the spectrum of light that we can see. What you see there in the colorful chart, this is the spectrum of light that is visible to the eye. In other words, what the eye can see. But light is made of such a wide spectrum, right? At the left side, are very short wavelength or very high frequencies. So extreme left, you have gamma rays, and then you have X-ray. On the right side, then you have shortwave radio, television, FM radio, microwave, right? And then somewhere in the middle is that small little range that we can see with our eyes. So in other words, our eyes cannot see X-ray, although X-ray can hurt us, but we can't see X-ray. Similarly, our eyes cannot see the waves of the radio waves, FM radio, shortwave radio, television waves. Our eyes cannot see them because the frequency is too low, right? Beyond visible light. So only that little thing in the middle between that 101 micrometer, that in that little range are these visible light. The high frequency on the left, that is the violet and the blue and the green. The lower frequency on the right, and that is the orange, the yellow, the orange, and the red, right? Okay, now let's look at that explanation one more time. It's very important, right?
Some scientists claim the simple act of seeing a colour triggers a spontaneous reaction in the nervous system. This is automatic. It isn't caused by any association, but by the wavelength of the colour. Objects reflect light at different wavelengths. Our brain interprets these wavelengths as different colours, from blue, the shortest wavelength, through green, and yellow, to red, the longest. The long wavelengths, the reds and oranges, are said to arouse the nervous system. Heart rate and blood pressure increase. The short wavelengths, the blues and violets, are meant to relax the nervous system.
So let's go through that. Right, so the spontaneous reaction, and this is sensing the light. That spontaneous reaction is sanya, sensing the light. That's why it's called sensation. And the low frequency or long wavelengths, low frequency, the red and the orange produce unpleasant vedana naturally. We're not talking about liking. At this point, there is no liking or disliking. This is purely your central nervous system reacting. So the nerves react in an irritated way and causing your blood pressure to go up, heart rate to go up. They have very sensitive instrument to measure that. And then the blue, the green are said to relax the nervous system. So when it irritates the nervous system, then the Vedana is unpleasant. When it soothes the nervous system, then the Vedana is pleasant, right? So let's do an experiment. What is pleasant and what is unpleasant? Red on the left, blue on the right. You can tell which is pleasant, which is unpleasant, right? So the red is unpleasant, the blue is more pleasant. When you're just looking at it, you can sense it. I'm not talking about whether you like red or you like blue. Put away all your liking and preferences. Just purely looking at it, which is more irritating to the eye. And that is the red, very bright, irritating to the eye. Likewise, what is irritating to the eye? Is it the green? No, the green is soft. It is the yellow that is irritating to the eye. Oranges and yellow are irritating to the eye. Now take a look at it. Which box is irritating to the eye and which box is more soothing? So you can see the green and the blue, which are the high frequency, right, short wavelength, they are more pleasant because they soothe the nervous system. The red and the orange, the yellow and the red, these are long wavelength, low frequency light, they irritate. So what you have here is soothing, the pleasant Vedana, and the irritating, the unpleasant Vedana. So this is all natural. We're not talking about liking. Just keep that in mind. We're not talking about your preferences, but basically how your nervous system reacts to it. Okay. So I hope that has become very clear. Now let's listen to Bhante explain further.
So 3 ways of seeing it, that is called Vedana. Vedana we translate as feeling, how you feel the color, whether you feel it as something pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. That's the feeling. And the color we call the sensation. So the sensation and the feeling of the sensation. That is what is called Vedana and Sanya. Sanya is the sensation, Vedana is the feeling. So these 2 things are like the 2 bricks that make the wall. Just as you make a wall out of bricks, you make use of the Vedana and the Sanya to create the Rupa, the picture. So the picture or the mental image is created by the color and the feeling. And that creation or construction is what is called Sankhara. Sankhara is the construction.
So Bhante was pointing out, Sankara is this mental construction of an image. So in other words, here Sankara is referring to this very technical construction of bits and pieces being picked up as frequencies of light put together into an image. And so that is Sankara. Now, some people translate Sankara as volitional construction. It constructs your karma. Actually, it's not. Karma has to do with how you react to it. At this point in time, we're not talking about your intentional reaction. You have a central nervous system reaction. In other words, your nervous system is reacting, but without intention. This is automatic, autonomous. You have no intention behind that. Right? So your nervous system is reacting to the unpleasantness of yellow and red, or reacting to the more comforting, peaceful, or more comforting, pleasant colors of blue and green, right? So this is not volitional construction, not constructing your karma. It's really just constructing an image in the mind, producing this image, and then you interpret it. That's your perception. The vijnana is the way you interpret what has been perceived through the eyes. So Bhante said 3 ways of seeing. He was referring to the 3 feelings, whether it is pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Actually, a lot of people use the word neutral. I don't like to use the word neutral. It's actually not neutral. There is no neutral feeling, so to speak. It is pleasant or unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant, right? But they use the word neutral to call that, right? So the color we see is sensing. This color is sensation, sanya, and our nervous system reaction to that is the feeling, the vedana. And so we have sanya, vedana, and they are like bricks that make up a brick wall. That's what Bhante was saying. So it's really like, I would call it jigsaw puzzle. Bhante calls it bricks to make up the brick wall. I call it jigsaw puzzle, right? So it's really referring to the same thing, building up bits and pieces to build up the big picture. So Vedana Sanya creates, they are put together to produce this rupa, mental image, right? And this creation process is called Sankara, mental construction. We're going to look at this scientifically in a moment, exactly how that is done. Interesting. So this is really what is happening. We think we see a full picture, here Mona Lisa, but in reality, this picture we think we see is made up of bits and pieces, bricks, as Bhante would call it, bricks that make up the brick wall. So these bits and pieces, dot, 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 in computer terms, they call them pixels. And that makes up that big picture, okay? So we're going to come to that in a moment. Very interesting how this big picture is produced. Right, so now we have covered Vedana and Sanya. Now let's take a look at Sankara, the mental construction that puts it together. Now you're going to see something very interesting. Right? So I'm going to show you the full video first, medium length video, so that you can see how the brain puts it all together like a jigsaw puzzle, producing this big picture. And then only we will break it down and talk part by part. Okay, so let's look at the whole video first. Bear with me for a second.
Ophthalmologist Dr. Bill Elwood takes a snapshot of the back of the eye.
What you can see here are blood vessels running over the surface of the retina, and beneath them are light-sensitive cells, which allow you to see.
Lining the inside of each eyeball, there are over 100 million light-sensing cells. But only the bigger cone cells see in colour. And amazingly, only in one tiny area of each eye are there enough of these cone cells jam-packed tightly together for sharp colour vision.
Most of the retina gives you vision which is quite blurry. apart from this very small area in the middle.
Just that smudge that we can see there.
This little smudge here that gives you really fine detailed vision.
And that bright spot is even odder, an area which is completely blind.
That's where all the blood vessels come in and out, and where all the optic nerve fibres go back to the brain. And there's so much going on there that there aren't actually any light-sensitive cells in that area, and that corresponds to your blind spot. So it is a very odd design.
So if our eyes are designed with a blind spot and a mostly blurred image, how do we see the world in such intricate detail and vivid colour? The patchy image made at the back of the eye is just the beginning of how we see. As our eyes dart around, we make sure that anything interesting is lined up on our sharp spot, so we get a good look at it. And you don't know you're doing it, because the brain takes these jerky snapshots and creates a nice smooth movie of the world. And the brain also compensates for the blind spot. Because our eyes give us slightly different images, we can combine them to give one complete picture.
Let's break it down part by part. Right? What the retina is made of? It is made of rod and cone cells.
What you can see here are blood vessels running over the surface of the retina, and beneath them are light-sensitive cells, which allow you to see.
Lining the inside of each eyeball, there are over 100 million light-sensing cells. But only the bigger cone cells see in colour. And amazingly, only in one tiny area of each eye are there enough of these cone cells jam-packed tightly together for sharp colour vision.
That is the eyeball there. Maybe I will just put the full picture, then it's easier for you to see. Yeah, okay. So as light enters, it strikes the back of the retina in an area called the macula. And right in the center is a tiny little area called the fovea. That's high concentration of rod and cone cells. Yeah, approximately 150 rod and cone cells in this macula area. The macula area measures 5.5 millimeter roughly. And the rod cells sense only shades of gray, blurry images. But it is the cone cells. There are 3 types of cone cells. It is the cone cells that sense very sharp images. And this is concentrated in that tiny little area called the fovea, which is about 1.5 millimeter in diameter. That area called the fovea, where you have 100 cone cells that can pick up sharp color images. And there are 3 types of cone cells. Cone cells can only, each type can only sense specific color range. Right? So the 3 types are red, green, and blue. In other words, it can only be sensing those 3 colors. That's all it is. Each cone cell is sensitive only to one range of wavelength. Either the red range, that means the range where we call red color, or the green range, that is the range we call green, which is, and then the blue range. So it's really only being able to pick up one of these 3 colors. Right. So the light is entering the eyeball, striking at this area, the fovea, and the 3 types of cone cells will pick up only 3 fundamental colors, primary colors, pixels, right? So now let's take a look at the next part.
Most of the retina gives you vision which is quite blurry, apart from this very small area in the middle.
Just that smudge that we can see there.
This little smudge here that gives you really fine detailed vision.
And that bright spot is even odder, an area which is completely blind.
That's where all the blood vessels come in and out, and where all the optic nerve fibres go back to the brain. And there's so much going on there that there aren't actually any light-sensitive cells in that area, and that corresponds to your blind spot. So it is a very odd design.
Okay, so what you have here is the sharp part of the eyeball. I'll just talk to you. Okay, there is that sharp part of the retina, and that is actually the fovea, where the high concentration of these cone cells, the red, blue, and green cone cells, sensing specific colors. Only in that little part. Outside there are blur gray shades of gray. And then you see there in the lower, near the center, in the lower part, black patch. That is your blind spot. So what is happening is that the eyeball is constantly moving around, picking up the whole image, bits and pieces. So it's not actually focusing at the whole image. We think that our eye is seeing the whole image. Never. Our eyeball is moving very ever so slightly, picking up bits and pieces from what is being seen out there. So that is one spot, and here is the blind spot, and the rest are the blurry gray images of the rod cells. So it's only the one in the pink where it is a sharp, focused, colored vision of the cone cells. Okay. So the eyeball is jerking around, picking up bits and pieces from the whole environment. It's not steady on the image. It's just picking up bits and pieces from the whole environment. So in other words, it's picking up individual pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Okay, so let's take a look at this.
As our eyes dart around, we make sure that anything interesting is lined up on our sharp spot, so we get a good look at it. And you don't know you're doing it, because the brain takes these jerky snapshots and creates a nice smooth movie of the world.
So we're really picking up these jerky bits and pieces. Right? So the eyeball is darting around, picking up bits and pieces from the whole big picture. It's not really seeing the whole big picture. It's just bits and pieces, like pixels. Right? So on the upper left, you have the clown being picked up. Then on the right is this lady approaching. And then lower here, you can see the other lady. So it's picking up these different image, different parts of that image, bits and pieces of that image, and then putting it together, and then creating a three-dimensional image, and that is the parallax. So,
and the brain also compensates for the blind spot. Because our eyes give us slightly different images, we can combine them to give one complete picture.
So you can see the eye is an amazing instrument, picking up these little bits and pieces and putting it together. So in other words, we think we see Mona Lisa's face. We don't. Our eyeball is constantly darting around the whole of Mona Lisa's face, picking up these bits and pieces, and somehow the brain, amazingly, is able to construct it together as a full image. This construction is sankhara. That's what it is. The bits and pieces being picked up is the sanya, specific frequency, one pixel at a time, one bit at a time. Right? So the eyeball is darting around, picking up millions and millions of these bits. And that is sanya. Now, whether they are pleasant or unpleasant, that is vedana. Then the sankhara puts it together as a whole image, and then you start to notice the face of Mona Lisa. Right? So this is really what is happening, and that's what Bhante actually didn't use the word jigsaw puzzle. He used the word brick wall, as though you're putting up brick by brick. But I think jigsaw puzzle is a more interesting description. That's really what it is. It's a real jigsaw puzzle that the brain is able to construct together through the process of Sankara, put together the big image. So there you have it, Sankara. And that's basically it. So I think this is quite enough. I won't go much deeper than that. There is more to talk about. So next sharing, I will talk about the Vijnana part, how it begins to interpret the image. Right? So until now, we are aware what is sanya. Realize that now it's sensation, sensing like frequencies. Next week, we will also talk about the other senses, the hearing, what is happening with our hearing, and our skin, the touch, what is happening with the touch, and so on, okay? So I think that is quite enough for today. So if you have any questions, we're going to deal with those questions.